Poor people are poor because they're lazy. These are the wise words from Linguo Chen, a multi-millionaire from Hong Kong. We'll call him Bruce. Bruce is a head manager at a major international mobile company, so he's got a lot of cash and a lot of opinions. But what happens when someone like him has to walk a mile in the shoes of those less fortunate? Today, Bruce takes on a challenge. He's gonna live on the streets for 5 days with no money, no phone, and no food to experience the struggles that many people face every day when they don't have a job or a home. Will he still think poor people are just too lazy after this? Let's find out. On his first day, Bruce set out to find a job. He thought it would be really easy, just to apply to be a food delivery person or dishwasher. But he quickly ran into trouble. Almost every place rejected him because he didn't have a phone. Finally, he got hired at a restaurant, but his first shift wouldn't start until the next day. It might seem harsh to take away his phone for this challenge, but that's the reality for many people who have nothing. By 7 p.m., Bruce was getting hungry. Non-profit organizations often give out free food to homeless people on the street, but Bruce couldn't bring himself to stand in line with them. His pride made it hard to be around people he used to call lazy. He'd rather skip dinner than to wait in line with folks he thought were drug addicts.
真係唔係專業，我想講，係真係同一班人安子一齊去分一啲飯啦。我呢個係我預計唔到嘅係。
By the end of the night, Bruce was hoping that the restaurant job would at least get him breakfast for next day. Finding a place to sleep wasn't easy for Bruce. He gathered some cardboard boxes, built a makeshift shelter, and even made a pillow out of them. He set up near a basketball court, but his rest didn't last long. At 4 a.m., he was woken up by early morning basketball practice. Despite the rough start, Bruce found a bit of hope at the restaurant where he'd be working. They gave him some food, and he started out his day as a food delivery person. But after just half a day of delivering food, Bruce's feet were covered in blisters. He was exhausted and didn't know what to do next. By the end of the day, he had only made about $20, which got him thinking, if he worked this hard every day, he'd be barely enough to afford to rent a tiny room and save just about $150 a month. And that was based on the assumption that the restaurant would provide him with 3 meals a day. It was clear that this wasn't sustainable. It felt like there was no hope. But then something unexpected happened. It was Christmas Eve, and a kind stranger gave Bruce a quilt to help him stay warm. For his second night, he slept in the back of someone's truck, grateful for the bit of comfort in a harsh world. Despite the challenges, he began to understand the reality that many people face daily, with no safety net and no easy way out. Christmas Day came with a warning: extreme cold weather. The city issued alerts to homeless people, urging them to seek shelter at temporary facilities. Bruce had to go, but he was in for a shock. The conditions at the shelter were awful. The place was crowded, run down, and felt anything but welcoming. But with freezing temperatures and rain outside, he had no choice but to stay. Bruce complained a lot, feeling like he was too good for this place.
喂，哥仔，有冇啲好啲環境？係咁噶啦，即係硬食。係啊，都係咁噶。
But the biting cold left him with few options. He ended up staying at the shelter. Despite his discomfort and the unpleasant surroundings, he spent the night on 2 chairs pushed together while others slept on the floor. It wasn't ideal, but it was better than freezing to death. After 2 days, Bruce finally got warmer clothing, which was a relief. It was a stark reminder of how hard life can be for those without a home. Through his grumbles and complaints, Bruce started to realize just how lucky he'd been before taking on this challenge. It was a long way from his luxury office, and he knew he was only scratching the surface of what homeless people go through every day. On the 3rd day, Bruce woke up feeling exhausted. Even though he had just gotten out of bed, he noticed the holes on his socks and fully started to grasp the struggles of the lower class people. He decided he wasn't going to work for the next few days and would only focus on finding a better place to sleep. But even that was a challenge. After a lot of searching, Bruce found a decent spot to sleep, but then something unexpected happened, which I find kind of hilarious.
夠咗咁多水，
得㗎，呢度唔得㗎。
咁因為就坐喺度得啦。
坐喺度得。
就唔可以瞓着。
Bruce again wandering on the street, not sure what to do next. He lost track of time, what day it was, even the concept of time itself. None of it seemed to matter anymore since he was homeless and didn't have a stable job. Bruce realizes that when someone loses their sense of direction and purpose, they also lose motivation. And without motivation, it's easy to fall into hopelessness. It was then that Bruce understood the people he had once thought were lazy were actually just like him, but without the same luck and opportunities. He had been fortunate to grow up in a good family and get solid education. Now he was starting to see how harsh and unfair the world could be for those who didn't have the same advantages. It was an eye-opening experience that challenged everything he thought he knew about success and failure. Bruce also mentioned feeling extremely lonely during this time. He didn't want to talk to his family because he didn't want them to see him like this. Without friends or even strangers to talk to, he felt isolated. He also noticed something else about the homeless community. Many of them, like him, didn't want help from others. They didn't want pity or charity. They just wanted to be treated like human beings. On the next day, Bruce had a revelation. Being poor had changed the way he thought about life. Work wasn't about climbing corporate ladder or impressing others. It was about survival. He became so desperate that he forgot all about pride and arrogance he once had. All he cared about was having a full meal for the day and finding a safe place to sleep for the night. This experience was much worse than Bruce had ever expected. He thought he'd have a challenge for 5 days, but he didn't realize how deeply it would affect him. What made it even more depressing was knowing that for him, this was just an experiment. But for many people, this is their reality for a lifetime. They are often forgotten, and they don't always know how to ask for help. Bruce knew he would eventually return to his comfortable life, but others wouldn't be so lucky. This realization hit him hard, making him rethink his assumptions about poverty and success. By the end of this video, Bruce hoped that those watching would be more grateful for what they have and see life from a different perspective. The perspective of those struggling to make ends meet. And that caused the end of the challenge. Thank you for watching, and I hope this story stays with you as it has with me.